your blood, you will not interact with oxygen in the air, which means that your tissues will not be able to go through a combusting metabolic process. They will not be able to generate heat so that the reactions occur. They won't be able to release waste. And literally, we call that death.
So
death only from the sense that the metabolic processes that drive light into movement have ceased. See, because there literally is no death because energy cannot be created or destroyed. But the key is, can you keep the energy moving? So it's no different from a person that has blocked arteries. They can't keep the energy moving because the pathway that it moves through has become blocked.
Okay. So what I want to try to get from you, Dr. Pookrum, is, okay, we have this melanin, and we live in this media-saturated society. It tells us to eat it, Mickey D's, Wendy's, Burger King, eat this kind of defunct food. But
and
it
causes a problem. That's why we see people who are losing their melanin. I see people every day, and it looks like somebody threw scalding water on them, and they actually have, looks like they have little teeny scars left where the melanin died. And so we see this where they have all these little white dots or pale dots where the melanin, the melanocytes themselves that make the melanin are dying. And we notice that when you begin to lose melanin, you have a failure in your immune system. So that's one of the reasons now that everybody is so afraid of all the bacteria. Bacteria have always been here. But they've never been a threat to us because our immune system handled it when they came into our environment known as our human body. But now with eating artificial foods, eating foods that have substances in them that were never to be eaten, that have now actually altered and totally captivated the cell that contains melanin, when melanin interacts with many of these substances, it actually loses its capacity to cycle the light, cycle the energy, and to maintain the energy within that cycle. And so, therefore, the energy is squandered and lost, and the metabolic reaction doesn't occur.
So what is it that we who live in this society, if we're losing our melanin, how can we replenish it? What should we eat? What kind of diet should we maintain? Should we stay out in the sun?
Individuals who are melanin dominant must have, first of all, sunlight. That's a big problem.
Does that mean sunbathe?
That's correct. And the disease that occurs from not getting enough light is called malillumination. It's a serious problem. And even white people suffer from malillumination. They call it seasonal affective disorder. It causes them to be depressed and that kind of thing. But it goes into a much more serious problem for melanin-dominant individuals because our brain requires that it be exposed to full-spectrum light. Otherwise, we have severe personality disorders. We have severe changes in what would appear to be normal behavior because of lack of light. So just being under fluorescent lights and incandescent lights is inadequate for a melanin-dominant individual. They must have full-spectrum light exposure.
So, Jewel, you're telling me as an editor, I spend most of my time in a dark room with just TV monitors.
It's a problem for you.
And I live in New England, and...
It's a problem for you.
There's no sun up here. There's no sun up here.
It's a big problem for him.
It's a problem. And this is the reason why I'm in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia.
So you're saying I need to move closer to the equator so I can get more sunlight?
Or you need to make sure that you take time out and go someplace like that. For me to stay in Michigan the last 9 years that I was there, I had to go every winter to the tropics for at least 10 to 12 days and actually charge up my battery, my melanocytes, so that I could get through the rest of their early spring and winter.
Okay, so sunlight's a beginning. Get more sunlight, move out of New England. We have winter 12 months a year. You might as well, okay, I won't say 10 months a year. We have winter. There's very little sunlight, so I need to move out. What else can I do as a black person in this New England region? What kind of diet should I maintain?
One that is definitely living. That is to say, not a lot of cooked food until in the winter. And if you're going to cook, it should be whole grains and beans. That should be the primary foods, along with vegetables in season. But raw vegetables are very, very important for us because it contains the light we need. We need to have fresh water. We do not need adulterated carbohydrates in the form of sugars. Too much fruit juice is very deleterious to the minerals that are needed to store the light. See, the melanin, once it absorbs the light, you want to store it like a battery. That's why if you don't have that battery acid, which is minerals, the charge will pass through, but then it doesn't hold, and then you can't go back later and actually quick start the system. So you have to have those minerals on board when you sunbathe so that the melanin is charged up, and then the excess energy is stored in the minerals, so that when you're not in sunlight, you won't know it because the stored minerals will kick in the system and you'll still function properly.
As you can tell, 2-second delay for a CD.
So how is it that you deal with dis-ease?
How is it that we deal with
dis-ease? Disease.
Well, dis-ease is an energy imbalance. That's all it is. And so, therefore, now we can apply all different modalities to bring about balance and harmony again. That's why using light, for the longest time, my colleagues wanted to say that that was quackery to actually use light to treat an individual, and that they would have taken your license, and did do that to many of my future-sighted, truth-aligned colleagues as I read their work, that they were totally, blasted and discredited, etc. And now we have a whole science in medicine known as phototherapy.
Well, you were upsetting the status quo with that thought process. It wasn't published in the science journals and touted by the pharmaceutical companies and something that the insurance company could bill for.
Well, et cetera. And so that's true. And so now they will pay for some of these things. There's still a lot more that can be done. So therefore, if we wanted to try to charge up the system and bring it into balance with a pill, then how could we then charge you for exposure to light? So not until we could get it all together and put it in a form that we could charge for, then could we give it to you. And see, and this is why I'm very upset about the fact that the scientific literature has proclaimed and explained techniques for healing that supersede the consciousness of the general public by almost 30 to 40 years.
Well, while you were talking, we took a phone call off the air from an AIDS researcher, a proclaimed scientist in the Brookline area, and he didn't listen to the entire program, but the little that he heard, I guess he was beginning to take some difference with what you were saying about the electromagnetic spectrum and the nature of it, what it is, and wanted to put in that radio waves were equating them to sound waves, and they were not. They were different. There was mechanical waves versus subatomic photons. So he wanted that to be registered and get a reaction from you on that.
Well, there's nothing to react about, but as I look here with radio waves, all light particles are subatomic photons. Depends on what level of their anatomy or understanding the atom, which is what the word anatomy comes from, that you look at. So if we actually wanted to look at one ear of corn, for example, in a field of corn, and in a human body that is structurally in alignment with its nervous system, can perceive that as a reality and then identify a source of which it can then share it with other people. And the Dogons, for example, use their clothing, use ceremonial ointment, ornaments, etc., to demonstrate these star systems that they were perceiving without a telescope.
And the Dogon people are located in West Africa, in the country of Mali.
Correct.
He also wanted to express the notion of making distinctions between the races, that scientifically is not true.
And that scientifically is not true. And so he needs to do more work. I just bought, maybe about 4 years ago, more studying. I just bought 4 years ago a volume, a 3-set volume. It cost me $650 because the scientists that have done nothing